All right, we're live. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our first edition of BUILD Cast, where we will be talking about everything related to the home building industry. The goal is to create meaningful discussion between those that want to build a custom home and the builders that build them. With me today on this beautiful Saturday, co-hosting is new construction guru Ashlynn Kelso. Ashlynn, let's hear a little bit of background on yourself and why you do what you do. But first, you have no build swag whatsoever.
I do.
You know what that means?
No. I have Thrive.
Hey,
oh my gosh.
Every guest gets a build hat. So
Woohoo!
Put it on and you can't. It's going to be.
Yeah, I know. It's on.
Put it on. Yeah, that might be a little difficult. So. All right.
But yeah. Okay. So thank you though. I appreciate this. I like the white one better. So maybe we'll swap after this actually.
I can do that.
Anyway, so background on me, been in the industry about 8 years now. And really just started doing construction loans, I would say, for the past few years. Once I, came to Thrive, we have a great build division, thanks to you and the company. Thank you. So anyway, I then this last year built a custom home myself. I didn't, had a builder, but so that really made me really pour more into it, as far as just enjoying, kind of now doing it myself. So, yeah.
It really helps when you've gone through. I went through my first custom home a little over a year ago. It's really hard to describe and understand unless you've gone through the process yourself. And you're taking home buying, which is already essentially one of the biggest the largest financial investment most people make, and one of the most emotional, of course.
Right.
And
there were some tears shed. I'm not going to lie. So it is emotional.
Well, what is the saying? Make sure you're married firm ground before you build a custom home.
It's very true. It's very true. It's a lot. It's your money that you're spending to build that house versus just going and buying a house. So it's like you said, there's a lot of emotion to it. So
Absolutely.
I've kind of changed the way I even, talk with people about construction loans after going through it myself. So yeah.
Well, we're excited to hear from you today, and I will allow you to introduce our inaugural guest.
Awesome. Well, today we have a very special guest, Landon Smith.
Hey, it's good to be with you guys. You asked for a brief intro background, kind of moving to Texas. So very quickly got into real estate in 2010. It's a really horrible year to get into real estate, according to most people. But in that time, in addition to kind of helping people buy and sell real estate, really got into the whole investment side of things with rental properties, fix and flips, things like that. And when that kind of started drying up, we moved into building homes in the city and around Denver. A lot of infill product where we would scrape homes and put up new ones, and it was a lot of fun. And so it was interesting because the real estate background and helping buyers and sellers really contributed to what the market, what we built, because we were actually on a daily basis working with what the market was saying they wanted. So really got to design homes around what we were hearing that our clients wanted, and so that became a lot of fun. And so kept the residential business going and the building going. In 2016, my wife and I, we made a decision. Our daughter was about a year old then, that we wanted to come back to Texas and kind of started splitting time doing that. And when I got down here, I just noticed that there's a lot of beautiful homes around here, but there wasn't a whole lot of modern contemporary homes going up. And so, about 3.5 years ago, or 2.5 years ago, we decided to start this out, do some specs, and kind of turned into a different animal than what we anticipated. But yeah, that's kind of.
Tell everybody, you just mentioned something with the specs. For anybody that's watching right now, kind of just explain, what a spec is.
Yeah, that's a great question. So you have spec homes and you have custom homes. And so spec home is more of, you're building something to sell. And so you have to be a little bit more cognizant of, what you're building, because you have a general market that you're trying to sell to. So it's basically going out there and building a home and saying, I think somebody's going to pay X for this. And so you go out and build it with no buyer, and then, market it with an agent to sell it. So that's kind of what a spec home is. Custom home, obviously much different. You can do whatever you want. Like
Literally.
I'm sitting in my house right now. And if I was to build my house as a spec, I would not have built it the way that I did. And certainly wouldn't have decorated my office the way that it's decorated right now. I have my daughter's paintings on the wall, my guitars and things like that. But that's the beauty of a custom, is you can kind of do exactly what you want. So that's kind of the difference between a spec and a custom.
So Landon, what's in a name? What's behind Coregon?
So one of the guys,
Coregon? Is it Coregon or Coregon?
It's Coregon.
Okay.
Coregon. So kind of like Oregon. So yeah, one of the guys.
She likes to fancy it up and call it Coregon.
Coregon, yeah. No, it's Coregon. And one of my friends that was kind of the founders of this company, he was from Oregon and I'd come from Colorado. So we just kind of mixed the names, and that's kind of how that came to be. So
I like it.
Yeah. And well, you already talked about the guitars and all that kind of stuff behind you, so we won't go too much into that. But let's talk about experiences. I got to start working on not watching down here. Let's talk about your experiences as a consumer and really how that shaped what you're looking to accomplish as a home builder.
Yeah, so great question. So we built a custom home in Colorado, and one of the issues that I had was I was getting a lot of change orders, and the price that I was given did not end up being the final price. And because we had built so many specs, it was interesting to me that, because when we build a spec, like, we know exactly what everything costs up front. We have everything picked out before we even start the build, because we need to know what our numbers are, for pro forma, things like that. And when we built a custom in Colorado, it was just, we were getting hit with, hey, the wood floors are going to cost this much more, and the driveway is going to cost this much more.
And this was after you guys had already closed your construction loan.
Absolutely. And
contract signed and everything. Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah. And so what happens is, when you close on a construction loan, the lender says, great, here's this money we're going to lend you. And when the builder comes and says, well, hey, we thought it was going to cost X, but it's actually going to cost Y. You go to the lender and say, hey, it's going to cost Y. And they say, okay, cool, write a check. And so it was a lot of like writing checks throughout the process. And so it was. Which
causes delays too.
Right. Causes delays.
Change orders.
Not to mention, we didn't have anything picked out before we started. They said, well, you can pick stuff out, as you go. And, traveling back and forth from Colorado, that wasn't the easiest thing in the world. So yeah, I mean, that's my experience was, and it was a great build, by the way. Like, they did a great job. It was just, I never knew, like, when I was going to get hit with another change order. And so when we started our company, we kind of did what the same type of model. Well, here's your allowance, and, like, hopefully, it works.
Which is the way most builders do things.
Right.
I mean, just about every builder out there. That's just the way it's always been done.
Yeah, they say here's X amount for, appliances, whatever it may be.
Correct.
Which is not a horrible thing, because a lot of times it's not the builder that's doing that. They're not doing that because they're trying to create a problem. They're doing that because a lot of times the buyer, they want to get started right away. So
and they don't know what your taste is and how much you're willing to spend on every item.
Right.
I mean, that's impossible to know, right?
Right. Well, and I'm guilty of it. I mean, we had our allowance for our appliances, and I said that will be plenty. And then we started the process, and then I saw this really cool fridge that has a really cool screen, and I have 4 kids, and I was like, this could keep me super organized. I can link it to my calendar. And I did go over. And so, I mean, it is, there are things that are in our control that we may choose to go over. So like you said, allowances are a good thing where you have X, but if you choose a little bit extra, which was totally worth it, by the way.
So do you have this massive Sub-Zero in your in your house?
It's not
You
massive.
look at it and go, oh.
No, it's the cool screen that you can draw on.
So you can watch TV
Yes.
in your kitchen.
Yes.
Excellent. Well, we digress. So I think we can all agree that that's kind of the way it's always been done. But I think what I'm really excited to hear about is what you're doing to change that. What is the new way, so to speak, that you're looking to accomplish with Coregon?
All this go away. But to sum it up, we're trying to start where you're going to end up. So what we do now is we start off with what we call design discovery phase. And it's kind of like a home inspection for a custom build. So it requires some money up front. But just like you're going to go buy a resale home, you're going to get a home inspection. You want to know what you're getting before you actually close on that home. And that money is not refundable. It pays for an inspector to go inspect your house, right? Same thing here. So what we've done is in this design discovery phase, we take a deposit. It goes towards your build.
That's what I was going to add. I mean, if just to throw in the lender part, your deposit will go towards your minimum down payment. So if you're putting 5% down on the construction loan, to Landon's point, we can take that and use that, almost like earnest money for buying a house.
Right. And so it's a small deposit. It's nothing like what you would do at a contract. But what that does is it lets us order soils testing so we can accurately bid out your foundation. It gets a floor plan elevation of the house, so you get a design, and we start going through. And at that point, we have an idea of what the house is going to cost. Then we give those same allowances for selections, and we have somebody meet with our interior designer to pick up all these selections. The point is, this whole design discovery process gets you to the point where you've picked everything out. There are no surprises. So when you actually contract, that is the price. The only time that price changes is if it's a buyer-initiated change, like a refrigerator, or if somebody says, "Hey, I really want a metal roof instead of a comp shingle roof." After we've closed, okay, well, that costs more money, but we didn't initiate that. You did, the buyer, and so it really puts the buyer in control. And they have the option to, hey, we went through this whole design discovery process and we can't get what we want. Okay, you don't have to build with us at that point, but I'd rather figure out that now than force checks and change orders down the road. And so that's really why we do it.
And on the other, we talk about going over budget. The other thing about it is at that design discovery phase, with us, you can see, a metal roof costs this versus, shingle, so for us, we could kind of figure out what do we really want before we even close, because sometimes you don't know what certain things cost. So on the other hand, we keep talking about going over budget. What's nice about doing this is when we pick things out, they come back and say, okay, here's where we're at. So then you can kind of adjust too. If you're like, okay, let's, maybe we don't want a metal roof or whatever it may be. So
Landon, are there particular areas that you see a higher frequency of cost overruns?
That's a good question, Brian.
Thank you.
No,
nothing.
I mean, not anymore because it's all picked out. So there's I don't know if that's answering your question.
Well, I mean, what are the traditional areas that people tend to maybe underestimate a certain cost? Exactly. That's really what I'm getting at. And obviously, this is an area that you want to fix, which is great. But what are the areas where people spend the most? Let's say,
even if you're still pre-contract.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's all over the board. There's no one specific area. Some people it'll be flooring, some people it's cabinets. We've seen people go stained concrete and they put super high end cabinets in there. We've seen other people go with low end or lower end cabinets or countertops, and they go crazy on the floor. So really, there's not a specific area. We've had people do crazy appliances. So it's all over the board. But the point is,
I guess with the custom home.
Yeah.
I mean, that is the beauty of a custom home is what I like. It may not be what you like, and
probably isn't.
I've got
not that you don't have good taste.
I know. Yeah, but I mean, that is what's cool about building a custom home, though. Like Landon said, is when you go buy a home, the floors are there, everything's already there for you. It's going to cost you to change it, but you're already buying the house. But with a custom,
you're buying somebody else's house, essentially.
Right.
That's truly what you're doing. Whereas this one, you're building your house, nobody else's.
Right.
Of course, you also have to make sure that you're not building something so obtrusive and ugly that if you go to sell it, exactly. So, So let's dig a little bit deeper into that, Landon. How does what does that whole design process look like? Because I think one of the most intimidating things about building a custom home is, where do you get started? What do you do? I mean, tell me how that design process works. How does it come from what's in my head to a set of architectural plans?
Another great question. So, with anything, we found that it's really hard for most people, myself included, just to well, it's getting a starting place. So, figuring out what are your must-haves and what are your nice-to-haves, knowing what your budget is, and then we can start with, okay, if you want a 3-bedroom house, everything on this plan makes sense. Let's modify that, and most of the time that works. Sometimes you get people that come in like, hey, here's this plan I found online. Awesome. That's great. Like, we can totally work with that. But it's really it's asking questions. So I say this in like the nicest way, but like, we don't care what you do. Like, we really don't care what you do. We don't care what you build, as long as you have all the information you can to make the decision that's best for you. So it's really about education. It's about helping people, guide them through this. So the design process, no different. Here's a bunch of floor plans. Here's what you found online. Great. Like, we'll take a look at all of that and kind of start, putting that all together to really start getting what you want. But it's also your lot, what's the lot telling you to do? Like, where's that, there's that big oak tree sitting there. Like, okay, let's not take that down. Let's design around that. We maybe need to get a tree survey. I do love trees, and they're very valuable in Texas. Yes. And so really just trying to ask all the right questions. Is the land more important? Is the house more important? Is the location more important? And when you figure all that stuff out, you really start getting kind of a game plan together with what people's answers are. And again, like, what's right for, Bob may not be right for Sally, but if it's right for them, awesome. So we just want to help them get there and help them come to that decision. So.
Well, and just to add, at the same time, I always tell people, that's a good point there to then talk to a lender, because one of the things Lena mentioned was budget. And a lot of people will come talk with a builder and or a lender, and want to kind of get an idea, like, what can I afford? And without, like Landon said, what's the lot, what's the cost of the lots you're looking at? Or have you talked to a builder? What's their price per square foot? Just something we can cover.
Oh, the dreaded question. Can't wait till we'll let her finish before I get to that one. But
so things like that. So, I mean, what I do is, if somebody says, hey, my budget, if I were to buy a house, is $400,000, then I'm like, okay, well, that's where we need to start then with your build. And then that way they can say, okay, now we know if a lot's $100,000, then your build's $300, just to kind of give you numbers. So that way you can go with the builder, and if the builder says your budget all in is $400, and you're telling me you want to build 6,000 square foot house, that, we may need to up the budget or lower the square footage. So,
and it's really all about setting those expectations properly up front, really. And I love the approach that Landon has taken, because I think that's one of the most common issues is, you start out with that $400,000 budget, and the next thing you know, somebody's coming and saying, Ashlynn, you do a pre-approval for $450,000 or $500,000 or something like that, and you can go into loan types a little bit more later, but it can be very difficult to modify loans after you've closed on the construction loan, which means cash out of pocket.
Well, and a lot of people I talk to, when they come to me, going back to personal experience, I say, I know when I went in, I said, this is my budget. And then once you start picking everything out, your budget seems to slowly, go up a little bit. So I always say, like, if you tell me,
it never goes down, does it?
It never goes down. So that's the other thing. When I do, I have like a strategy call. I like to call, when I talk with people and say, okay, you told me 400, but I'm going to run numbers at 450 and 500. Let's just look at all of these and see what your monthly payment would be. Because that way, when you do go back, if you have gone over, at least you already know, one, that you're approved for that amount. Yeah. And then two, already have an idea of what your monthly payment would be like. So
yeah, good points. All right. So let's talk about the elephant in the room. Let's talk about price per square foot. How does Coregon address that?
Awesome. I actually like the price per square foot question.
Heard somebody say that before.
Well, no, it's great. It's because the answer is always, it depends. And it depends on so many things. But instead of just saying, well, it depends and stop, I'll hear a lot of people say, well, so-and-so said, they're 135, 150 a foot. Like, okay, cool. Like we can be that too, but what's your lot look like? Are you on well? Are you on septic? You have city water? Are you in the city limits, outside the city limits? Because if you have a well and septic versus something that has, city water and city sewer, like there's $50,000 right there. So
Right.
For me to say our build is X, you're automatically going to put something in someone's head where it's like, okay, my build is going to cost this, when I have to imagine that people are going to want water and they're going to want like a septic system,
Ideally,
for
yes.
wastewater. They're probably going to want, a driveway and fencing and landscaping. And they're probably going to have to pay permit fees if they're within the city. So there's all these different things that contribute to that. So
That most people don't really think about when they ask that question.
But I didn't either. I mean, even
most people don't.
No, and
unless you've done it before.
Right. Even as I had originated construction loans before, looked at plenty of specs, looked at plenty of contracts, I didn't really pay attention to how much a septic cost or, impact fees, things like that. So when I met with them, it was kind of like one of those things where it was like, okay, this is kind of your starting point with your budget, because these are things that you need to have. And one of the things that also they'll talk to you about is, electric versus, propane, things like that, that here's the cost for each of these. Which one do you want? Here's what's going to save you short-term versus long-term. So all that stuff, like you said, is going to have a contributing factor to that price per square foot.
So just so we have kind of a general framework, and you're based out of Georgetown, but your geographic is pretty broad. You're Travis County, Williamson County, I would imagine surrounding counties as well.
Yeah.
What are you typically seeing right now as kind of the lower end range and the higher end range, if I may ask?
Yeah, absolutely. So, we've gone further west. Like we have a build right now in Bertram. And we're going to be somewhere around 150, like all in with everything. And that they have a septic, they have a well, so we're able to do that. But burn, it's very, very easy. And they also, the finish level that they want is not super high end. So we're ending up about 150 there. You take the well and septic out of it, actually it goes way, way down. Within Georgetown. If you're talking downtown Georgetown, we're usually somewhere between 175 and 195, and a lot of it has to do with
price. Go ahead.
I'm not talking about the lot price. I'm talking about just impact. Like Georgetown has impact fees. There's water tap fees. There's sewer tap fees. There's all that. You get into Austin, and people ask, why is it so much more expensive to build in Austin? Well, Austin has a different building code. And
certain HOAs do as well. I mean, certain communities have requirements that you have to have a certain level of, masonry or finish out or landscape or whatnot. So,
Or, Austin's a great example. We're building a couple houses in Austin right now, and we got a bid back from one of the guys who's doing our insulation, and we do spray foam insulation in all of our houses. It's just standard, but we got a bid back.
It's really fun to watch.
Yeah, it is.
So same square footage house in Austin, and we got this bid back for property in Georgetown, and it was $10,000 higher. And so we called and said, what's going on? Why is this $10,000 higher? And he goes, oh, I thought that address was in Austin. And I was like, would it have changed that much? And he said, yes, because their building codes require this much more, insulation. And the way that they do our inspections, they make us come back 3 different times before we can do it, as opposed to Georgetown, where we can knock it out in one day. So they have to charge way more for labor, for their time, in addition to the extra material costs. So that's just one thing among many things that drastically changes the price per square foot. And the other thing with that is, usually, you go up in square footage, the price per square foot goes down, because these hard costs, they're spread out, over a much larger square footage than a smaller house. So just because it's, 175 or 150 on, this house doesn't mean it's going to be that on the other. Yeah. And another really good example is probably the last one I'll give, but we had 2 houses right next to each other within 50 square feet size difference. And so we got a 3,000 square foot house here, 3,050 square foot house here. And the one that was a little bit smaller, same neighborhood, same lot, same soils, everything the same. The one that was a little bit smaller was about $100,000 more than the one next to it.
Wow.
Why? Because they had the most expensive toilets I've ever seen. They had super unbelievably high-end cabinets.
$100,000. How many toilets?
No, but I'm saying like it was that, it was the cabinets, it was the flooring. And
Wow.
but those weren't. We didn't drive that cost. Like the buyer picking it up, which is totally fine, drove that cost.
So if I want gold-plated bidets, then
that's
you'll
on
put
you,
them in
man. But you get what I'm saying. So to answer that
Yes.
question, we can give a ballpark, but like ultimately, the client is in the driver's seat. Like they're the ones. We base our house at a very nice level, and for most people that works for them. But if somebody wants something else, it's a custom home. You can have it. It costs what it costs. So so going through that with people is really, really valuable because we get to start talking about all these different factors, and it really starts making sense. And then we have, we can say, hey, in this area, this neighborhood, this city, this is kind of where we're ending up. And that's all inclusive minus the land. So we're including site costs, everything in that number. So it's not, a kind of a, hey, let's contract and then like, oh yeah, well, you need this, and this. So.
Well, let's dig a little bit into the process. So say I'm sold. I want a Coregon built custom home. Where do I get started? And Ashlynn, let's start with you. How early should I engage my loan officer?
Immediately.
No,
I
whether I want to build in
joke.
6 months or 2 years.
Well, yeah, I say that. I mean, I'm joking, but I'm actually serious. I mean, I have somebody that called me recently, and they just bought a house, and they are building here in a couple of years, but they did not know how much do I need to save. Should we buy the land now? Be paying on it for the next couple of years? When do we kind of start talking to a builder? Because they may not even talk to a builder yet.
Yeah.
So
should they be talking to their lender first? I mean, is there a correct order?
I don't think there's a correct order, but I do think that if somebody has no idea about the process, I mean, so many people come to me and they say, I know it's 20% down on the land, and then I come to you for the construction loan. Well, in all reality, we could have closed the land at the same time of the construction loan with a much lower down payment.
That's a good question, because I think a lot of people ask, well, if I have to put down 20% on the land and another 20% on the construction loan, I'm pulling my hair out. Maybe I should just walk into a production builder and buy something that's already there.
Right. I always tell people, if you can afford to put, 5% down on a $400,000 house, you can build a $400,000 house with 5% down. So, I mean, obviously, depends on things like, we talked about, if you have a house to sell, but you want to stay living there during the construction, you may not have that 20% down. So things like that, where with this person, they were thinking maybe we should stay in this house and then sell and then rent. So we have, the 20% down.
And we do have programs that can help with that.
We do. Well, so talking to them about the one-time versus a two-time close, I mean, it was a better fit for them to be able to stay living in their house and put, the rest of their down payment that they had after they sold their house, but wait till, they're done building.
What does that mean? Explain for our viewers, what's the difference between a one-time close and a two-time close?
Good question. So for our one-time close product, when you close on your construction loan with your land, or if you already own the land, we'll roll that in with our construction loan. It's a true one-time close. I mean, we close, you begin building. There's no requalifying, things like that. At the end, we just go and it's what we call modification. So it is a true one-time close in the sense that some people will go, if your bank, you may have a higher interest rate during that build on the interest only. And you can continue paying that higher interest. And, but if you want to actually get the lower interest rate, you end up having to refinance. But our one-time close, we actually lock in at a cap rate when we close. So that's basically, in a nutshell, our one-time close. Okay. There's really not a lot of flexibility to it, though. You can't put more money down once the house is done. So a two-time close product might be better.
Well, except for, when we're talking to builders like Coregon, where they really need to make sure they button it down up front. That's their goal. So,
right.
But point taken.
Right.
And a two-time close?
Well, the two-time close is more, more of the flexibility would be more money down on the one-time close. Like you can't, if you have a house to sell or anything. So for us personally, we did a two-time close. We stayed living in our house. We put the minimum down that we needed to close. And then once we sold our house, when the new one was done, that's when we, took that equity and put it down at the second closing. So
So one-time close, reduce costs. It's not half the cost, but it's definitely less because you only have one close, so it is reduced cost. A little bit extra security because you have that rate cap.
Right.
And of course, simplicity of only having to go to the title company and close one time. Then two-time close. So the main advantage of a two-time close, would you say, is the overall flexibility, whether I have an existing house to sell and don't want to have to move twice. And then, of course, if there are changes throughout the process.
Correct. So like Landon said, that if somebody comes in and says, for instance, with us, we did have a change order and we decided to do a few extra things that we decided. So we, on the
And it
two-time
happens.
close,
I mean, it does. No matter how much,
And
yeah.
I said
But
that
it's
from the whole
self-inflicted.
time.
Yeah.
It is totally self-inflicted and totally worth it.
It should be a fun process. So yes.
So
two-time close is better for those instances.
yes.
Yeah.
So we were able to get an increase in our loan during the process to not have to come out of pocket with, that extra. So, and then of course, when we sold our house at that second closing, we were able to put more money down and have a little bit more control over, what our final loan amount was going to be there. So
great. Well, Landon, let's go to you then. So I know I want to build custom. Tell us a little bit about the difference in process. How do I get started? Let's say, both if I have land already, or let's say I need to find a piece of land.
Yeah, so if you have land already, just give us a call, go to our website. We have a contact us form on there. We'll reach out to you and get out there on your lot, take a look at it, assess the utilities, things like that. And we start that design discovery process, get soils testing ordered, things like that. If you don't have your own land yet, still looking for it. Two of us are licensed agents, so we can help you with that. If you have your own agent, awesome. I'm more than happy to work with them. When you're out there looking at stuff, give our opinion and go walk it with you. So either way, just give us a call.
Is there a certain percentage, and I'm sorry to interrupt, but is a certain percentage that come to you with land versus how often does that happen where they have land or don't, let's say?
Yeah, it's all over the board. Sometimes like an influx of they already have it and they're ready to go. Some we still got to find it. So it really depends.
So let's say I don't have land. I come to you and I say, okay, well, I have a general idea of what part of town I want to live in, what area I want to live in. That's something that you can help in terms of location. And do you recommend that our viewers look for an architect up front? Do I need to have my plans and specs and all that kind of stuff ready to go?
That's a good question.
If you want to, totally your call. If that's what you want to do. The nice thing about coming in, this is with any builder, if you go to, another custom builder around here or us, we have our kind of our stock plans, if you will. Got to come up with a better name for that, but plans that we've already done.
It's very mundane. You got to find something a little more sizzle behind with that steak. So come on.
But the nice thing about starting there, even if it's modifying it, tweaking some things here and there, like we've built that house before. And so a lot of those costs we have really, really dialed in. Whereas if you start from scratch, there are a lot of unknowns because no one's ever built that house before. But it's totally like either way. If your own land's great. If you want to start with that's great.
Well, and kind of what I'm getting at is I'm sure Ashlynn, you've heard this as well. We frequently hear of those horror stories where somebody goes out and they have stars in their eyes and they see this beautiful piece of land with this massive Spanish oak in the middle of it, and this is my dream lot and my dream house is going to sit right there on it, only to find out that $100,000 worth of slab engineering later, I can only afford a 800 square foot box sitting on it. So how is that something that you can help in the process while looking for that piece of land?
Yeah, so we'll send out one of our guys to go, shoot the grade, which is the distance between where the front of your house would go and the back. Like what's that, what's the slope on that? Because that's going to greatly affect the foundation cost, which is obviously important. And then it's also, you built enough in a number of areas where, we know on the east side of 35, 99% of the time, the foundations be a little bit more expensive just because of the soils. Sure. We know on the west side it's gonna be a little bit cheaper most of the time. Sometimes it's not, but
that's important stuff to know, especially if you're, on a tight budget. Well, even if you're not, I would want to know these things before I bought this piece of land.
Well, our soils were soft. I thought, being in the hill country that, whenever we got our soil test back, they said, okay, here's what your bid came back at, and yours was softer than we expected. And
you're so soft.
I didn't even know what that meant though. Again, going back
we
to
had to bring in a bunch of fill to your lot, and it was a pretty substantial amount of money.
It was
because the engineer said, hey, you need to build a foundation this way, and you need to bring in some extra fill to put underneath it. And so, there's all those different things.
But at least I knew. I want to tell, with them, at least I knew, I knew the cost
up front.
I knew the cost. I knew what it meant. And they let me know, like, here's why yours may be more expensive or not, because so many people talk about, well, here's how much I built, price per square foot. And here's what my builder did. Yeah. But has your builder actually done a soils test? Have they been out to your lot? Like, where is the placement? And all those things I never thought about until we went through the process. So,
because you don't build houses on a regular, you may finance them, but you don't build them.
Exactly.
And I love that that's something that y'all will do, Landon, because it might be, maybe less, more cosmetic things like where can I position my house to save the most trees and stuff like that. I love the idea of saying, okay, well, this is the lot I really like. Now I want to go talk to my builder and say, okay, does this fit with the design of my house? Because let's say I go and have architectural plans before I find the right lot, before I find the builder. Well, I may have just paid, $2 or $5 a square foot or whatever for this big, beautiful set of plans. This just doesn't make sense. So let's continue then. So we have, let's say we have our pre-approval, we have our land picked out. Now we're going to get to the sexy part, the really fun part, which is, again, getting what's out of our head and onto a conceptual design. And that's something that you guys can help with, correct?
Absolutely.
What does that look like?
Yeah. So, go out to the lot, figure out where the house should go. We have an idea of what your square footage is going to be. And so we know if you're a 1-story, 2-story, you can really start designing around that space, and for some people, it's, I want to see this thing on my lot, whether it's a barn or, other people, it's like, I want the focal point to be this tree. Some people downtown, it's like, I want to see the courthouse. There's all these different things, and once you start really reining in on that, it forces creativity, which is the fun part of it.
Yeah.
And that's where you're starting to say, well, you want to put your master here because you're going to be able to see out this window, when you're laying in bed, you'll be able to see this or whatever it is. Or in some of our infill homes, let's not put a big window right there because there's going to be a house right there. Let's not put that there. Let's put that somewhere else. So that's where you really start being creative, and it's a lot of fun, especially with custom, because some people want really unique things. Like me, I wanted an office that was totally separate from my house, where you can't get to it without going outside. Not something I would have done in a spec, but that's what I wanted. So that's where you really get to hear about people's story, how they live, what their lifestyle is. Like, what do you like to do? Do you like to be outside? I hate being outside. Okay, let's not spend money on a big patio. Or I want to live outside. Great, let's take money from here and put that out there. So when we know
my
your
laundry room
budget,
is
we really,
huge.
that
was my like. He probably would not want my laundry room, but
everybody likes a big laundry room. Nobody just nobody likes laundry. That's the problem.
I've got a lot of it.
Yes. That comes with having a whole army of kids at home. So, and what are some focal points that people spend most of their attention on? Granted, I know you're going to tell me it's all over the place, but what are the trends right now that people are really putting a lot of? And you could answer as well, Ashlynn, since you deal with so many new construction clients. What are people really wanting right now?
For me right now, and I'm not to date this, this podcast, video that we're doing, but with COVID, I think people had a lot of time to really sit and think about do I want to be in the suburbs? Do I want to be in the city? Do I want to be on land? And so, I mean, construction loans in general have been booming for us, during this, last 3 months, because I think people have time to evaluate and say, maybe I don't like my neighbors. Maybe I need more space. So
Maybe I need a separate workspace like
right.
Landon has. Yeah.
And to your point, I've had people go, now they're working from home full time. Like
Yes.
they've realized that, okay, so now it doesn't matter that I need to live in the city. I can move wherever I want to live, because now that's where they're going to be working permanently, because people realize, a lot more people can work from home and not commute.
Yeah.
So I think that's why we've been getting so many people asking about construction loans, is because people are wanting to, one, build what they, a custom home, realizing too, one, that it's actually affordable. And then two, just finding land where they want to, where they're going to spend most of their time. So,
Landon, any specifics that you're seeing? Any trends? Whether prior to COVID or currently. What kind of trends
I
are you
think
seeing?
prior to COVID was, you get the people, kitchen's really important. I love to cook. Okay,
Yeah.
cool. Let's spend money there. Or, I don't cook. We eat out all the time, so I don't want to spend money on the kitchen. Or it's, bigger bedrooms or game room. I think one of the most recent trends that's really interesting and not surprising is Workspace. To Ashlyn's point, a lot of people are now able to work from home. So we're getting a lot more people very interested in that office. It's not, hey, walk into the house and there's a little office space on the side, next to the foyer. It's a lot more detailed and, spending
giving
a lot
its
more
own
time.
space.
Right.
Yeah.
And making sure that's private, and that they can actually work from home, because it's happening a lot more now. So, which has been fun, getting to kind of design Workspace, so.
Best way for potential clients to get their ideas to you? What does that look like? I mean, obviously, they can make selections in a showroom, but before you get to that, I would assume Houzz, Pinterest, stuff like that, just kind of collecting a scrapbook, so to speak, and getting that to you.
Yeah. What we do generally is let's start with the things we can't change. So
Sure.
and that starts with location. You cannot change your location. Once you build there, you know what I mean? And then it goes to floor plan. What do you absolutely have to have in your floor plan?
Yeah.
And once the floor plan's done, then it gets really fun. Just put an elevation on anything, make it modern, make it farmhouse, make it, whatever you want, Mediterranean. And so, Houzz, Pinterest, all those places are great during the design process. When we introduce clients to our interior designer, she'll set up a separate Pinterest or Houzz page, depending on what they're comfortable with. So they can start pinning stuff, saving stuff to that. And that really helps her. And that's what's really fun to people, is they can go out and start picking that stuff, seeing it, and they're actually, now they have a floor plan to imagine that going in there. So it becomes really fun. And there's the stuff that people don't think about. The electrical part's fun, getting to pick out where my outlet's going to go. Okay, well, my bed's going to go here, so I want an outlet here, and my TV's going to go up there, so I want one there. You get to pick all that stuff out, and it really is a fun process.
They do walk you through that. I mean, we have more outlets than somebody else would say we need in our living room, kitchen, dining area, but we wanted to make sure that we could turn the lights off when we were going to our room, but then also the kids could also turn it off when they were heading up the stairs.
Better to have too many. Yeah.
So we wanted to make sure that no matter where we were, it wasn't like I was having to walk, clear across the house. So
of course, now technology, you can turn your lights on and off with your phone. So, but
Then
hey,
there's
if you want
that may be
switches
it.
physically every 10 feet, then so be it.
If that's within your budget.
If that's within your budget, there you go. There you go. So the bottom line is we don't have to be architects we can come to you and with a general idea of what we want, what style we like, and then you can kind of help guide us through a lot of this stuff. And I would presume give us a little nudge maybe if we're doing something that may not make some sense.
Yeah. And that's a question for kind of at the beginning, no different than if somebody's buying just a resale house.
Sure. One
of the first questions, how long are you going to be here? And if the answer is 2-3 years, okay, let's be really intentional on what you put in here. If it's, hey, I'm going to live here forever, this is a forever home, awesome. It doesn't matter what you do whatever you want. But
having a successful real estate company, I think you have a pretty unique insight to say, hey, you can build whatever you want, but if you're going to sell it 2 years from now or 10 years from now or whatever, that's got to play a factor.
It can, again, depending on, just had this conversation with somebody the other day. I said, like, man, I'm wondering about, is this a good idea? And I was like, who are you asking? And they're like, well, I'm asking you if you think it's a good idea. I'm like, well, you're in love with it. He's like, I know, but do you think it's a good idea? I was like, what does my opinion matter? Like, you said this is your forever home. Like, what I say in this particular aspect, it doesn't matter.
And in some cases, a forever home is a forever home, but in a lot, you definitely have to be.
But then it's coupled with, if you go to sell, like, this probably wouldn't be a great thing. But if this is truly your forever home, like, my opinion, and again,
who are you to say
is
exactly.
irrelevant?
It's not. Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
But to y'all's point too, I mean, on the lending side, before we even close your construction loan, we are getting an appraisal done.
I know where you're going. Yeah.
I'm like, y'all triggered me to talk about that. And that is important. So somebody may want to build a 1,200 square foot house in a whole community where there's all 5,000 square foot houses. And so there's
really
things
good point,
that, we're going to make sure that it has to appraise, just like if you were to buy a house. So to your point with, with having a team of builders that also know how to read comps and know, that they can say, yes, this is your forever home and you can do whatever you want as far as the design stuff goes. We still have to keep in mind square footage, bedrooms, things like that, to make sure we're not overbuilding, underbuilding, and then have an appraisal issue after you've gone through all of that, plans.
If I'm putting 5% down on a $300,000 house, I'm not having Landon put $100,000 extra of toilets in it. It's just not going to make sense.
It may not appraise.
It probably won't appraise. So,
and just
that's a good
FYI,
point.
Brian, just to clarify, it wasn't $100,000. It was a combination of things. And
it was more than just the toilets. I digress, but it does help prove this point very nicely.
It was the showers too.
And then the showers too. They must have been gold plated. But that actually brings up a really good point in making sure that, hey, if unless you're paying cash or have a sizable down payment, you have to keep within the range of what's around you, or it may not. You have to accept the fact that it may not appraise. So.
Yep. And the only caveat to that is there's been instances where, I told these buyers, I obviously won't name the names, but the appraisal came in low, and I said, hey, I don't have a crystal ball, but no, it wasn't.
I know.
But I don't have a crystal ball, but I just want you to know, like, this is going around your house, and no one can see that yet. And so I believe that, like, while it's not appraising right now, you're actually going to be way ahead once these other things happen. And when those did, I can say this now, it actually did happen. A year and a half later, that $20,000 appraisal gap has actually turned into like $75,000 of equity. And so it's not just, there's just so many just factors that go into all of this, to where it's so hard to give just a black and white answer, because it's a world of gray.
But I think that to the extent that you're willing to give suggestions and quite honestly, us in the lending side, these are things you may want to consider, because, for most clients, this is probably the first time they've built a custom home. So these are things you may want to take into account, because this is the largest single investment for a majority of the people that are building. So, these are things you may want to think about. I think that's important.
I love, to add to what he said, I mean, that's the things that they're thinking about, though, is they're not just saying, hey, we're going to build you this house and, okay, make sure it appraises. But they are looking at, I know what's going on around here.
Yes.
Like, let me show you, because, with having that background in real estate and looking at comps and knowing the communities and getting to know more than just your house, what it appraises for, they're looking at the bigger picture.
Which again kind of supports, why engaging you, Landon, early on in the process is a really good thing. So,
and I want to add to that. I have something. I'm like,
stop.
I had somebody ask me, should I buy the land? I thought about this when we're talking about cost and everything with, buy the land now and then wait, things like that. Earlier, we were talking about the soil test and, cost of things and the septic. I had somebody come to me that had no idea that those were some extra costs. They'd already bought the land, closed, and didn't really pay attention to deed restrictions, didn't pay attention to didn't have soil tests done. They were told there was going to be, water and different things provided that actually weren't. So going back to when should I talk to a builder? When should I talk to a lender or a realtor? I mean, if you're thinking about doing it, there's no harm, and it's not going to cost you anything to just make an appointment and talk with the guys at Coregon or with the lender to find out what you can afford or work towards, qualifying for what you want to afford. But things like that, though, could save you a ton of money if you want to hold off on just buying the land. Talk with everybody first, and kind of get as much information as you can.
So as we look at wrapping up the discussion, so that brings up a question. So I think you alluded to this a little bit earlier, Landon, but at what point what point is a financial investment required?
During our
Design
and
phase?
discovery phase, yeah. And it's not like first appointment, and like the first appointment you go through, and it's like, hey, here's essentially 3 options. Like, pick one of our already built before plans. I was trying to get around stock plans, so pick one of those, and it's obviously just okay. There's soils testing to do. Like, that's easy. If you want to modify, like that's another set. And then if you want to go straight from scratch, like it kind of tiers with the square footage. So like 1,000 square foot home is going to be more expensive, than a 5,000 square foot home. But yeah, that's kind of that's the only money up front. It goes towards your build, and you actually have something in your hand. If you decide that, hey, we're not the best fit for you, totally cool. Shake your hand, and like you can walk away. You got your soils testing, you got a set of plans. Like you're walking away with something.
Sure.
But it's just so much easier to do that. And build a relationship that's not, it's not on a contract. It's on, hey, if you like us and we like you, like, let's keep going. There's just things we have to charge for because it costs us money up front. But yeah, that's
not like at the initial, conversation.
Correct.
Like,
I mean, that's when you're past the third date or so. Things are starting to get serious, and yeah. So we can.
Yeah, you've got the lot. I mean, you actually have a lot that you can get a soils test done. I mean, there's, you got to have, you're kind of already, somewhat have an idea of what you're doing once you get to that point. So,
because obviously you have, once you get to a certain point, you're investing your time and resources as well. So that certainly makes sense. So Landon, what is the one thing that you want our listeners to know? If you could tell them anything that you'd want them to know, what would that be?
Anything. One thing, I guess it's not as hard as you think it might be. Yeah, we've had people that thought it was out of reach, and it's worked out really well for them. So I think just that,
I would think that would be, and I would think that would be one of the most common fears people have, is that custom building, it's for, oh geez, thanks Nancy. That's my fault, obviously.
You have a pretty sick silence button on your phone.
Oh, yes. All right. Okay, so we'll do that one more time. Landon, what's the one thing that you want all of our viewers to know? What's the one thing that you feel is important?
I think there's like 100 things, but if I had to pick,
a hard question, yeah.
I know, pick one.
Probably it's more doable than you probably think it is, and I think
great answer.
Worst case scenario, you ask some questions and figure out that it is or isn't the right thing for you and your family. And so, yeah, I think just consider it as another option,
I think that's a great answer and a great way to wrap up, because I think that seems to be one of the biggest issues with people looking to decide between, do I build a production or spec home or resale versus custom, is it's too much money. It's only for the affluent. I have to have perfect credit, tons of money, tons of cash. The process takes too long, and it's really, all of those are largely falsehoods. And I love that you've tried to create a new way of going about the process, and how you budget and really how you approach custom building altogether. Ashlynn, I'll ask you the same question.
I knew it was coming. I mean, I didn't really know it was coming. I knew.
But you did.
Yes. I think to Landon's point, like, I think it's kind of the same thing when it comes to financing. Like, it's much more doable than people think. I think after people talk to us, you know, some people think that I need to wait a few years. I need to wait till I have more money saved up. I think the biggest surprise is that it's more affordable than they think.
Yeah.
I mean, even right now with rates being as low as they are, you can afford more than you could if, you know, when rates were a little bit higher, or, you know, who knows what's going to happen, you know, months, years down the road. So I think, you know, what we were talking about earlier, it's never too soon to talk to a lender to see, you know, what they can afford. I have one more. I know you said one. I have two. Give me
That
two.
doesn't surprise me, but go ahead.
So I think the second thing is people, you know, we do kind of on our construction loans, you know, it's hard to find a lender that can actually truly, like, we do in-house financing for our construction loans and the permanent loan. You know, you may go to another lender and they're going to send you, you know, maybe do like more of a broker deal and send you to a bank to get the financing. But
Speaking
we are
of the old way, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so we do have the option to do kind of a one-stop shop. So
instead of saying, hey, go get your construction loan at ABC Bank and then come back when the house is complete,
right,
it breaks that continuity. And you know, whereas you can truly act as a concierge for the entire process.
Right. We go over your construction loan numbers
process.
and we go over your permanent loan. So you get to talk with us about both of them at the same time. So it's kind of one of those things where we can tell you, here's what's going to cost here. And then when you come back, when the build's done, here's what it's going to be. So that was my second thing.
Hey,
thank you.
At least it was brief, right? Well, I think that'll about wrap. Landon, thank you so much for joining us today. Can you let everybody know really quick the best way to reach you?
Our website, www.coregonbuildingcompany.com. Go check it out. You can see some of our builds. There's a contact us form on every single page. And yeah, we'd love to hear from you. So.
Can't say enough positive things about what Landon's done in the last couple of years. They build a beautiful home, you know, and they say do business with who you like. You know, that's what people do. And Landon is one of the most down-to-earth, approachable builders that I've had the pleasure of meeting and becoming friends with. And so
Absolutely.
Again, thank you so much for joining us. Really appreciate your time. And you too as well, Ashlynn. Tell us really quick how people can get a hold of you.
So Brian's cell phone number is no. So I think we'll probably the easiest way too is the website. I have AshlynKelsoTeam.com. Also have a Facebook page too that we'll be posting this on. So send me a message there. I try to make my contact information, you know, hopefully readily available on the website, Facebook, things like that. So
well, one thing I really like about you, Ashlynn, well, there's a lot of things, but you're passionate about what you do, specifically custom building. And when you have that passion, you know, I think you're that much more accessible. You enjoy having consultations and really walking people through the process. So thank you for your time as well. And hope to talk to you guys again sometime.
Awesome.
Yeah.
All right.
All right. Thank you.
All right.
All right.
Take care, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.